90% of marketplace startups fail. Here's how you can avoid making the same mistakes. One of the biggest reasons why marketplace startups fail is because they don't solve the chicken and the egg problem. A lot of marketplace founders, they assume that if they build the marketplace, then demand will come. A marketplace only works if both sides show up to the party, basically. If one side is missing, then there's no reason for the other side to be there. Imagine launching a ride-sharing app with no drivers. Why would anyone show up to that one? Or an Airbnb kind of marketplace with no listings. No one would of course be able to book anything and no one would use that site. And a lot of marketplace founders, they get stuck because they try and focus on building both sides at the same time. The main way to try and solve the chicken and the egg issue is to build the supply side first, because buyers will only show up if there's a supply side, basically. So for instance, Airbnb, they focused on getting hosts first. So in New York, they went from door to door and basically helped all the hosts with taking professional photos of their apartments. So they had a really nice supply side, basically. And Uber also gave a lot of incentives to drivers before launching to riders. I do actually have a full video on how to solve the chicken and the egg issues, so go and check that one out. Great, so let's say that you have supply and demand kind of figured out, but there's another killer, launching a Me Too kind of marketplace with nothing unique. A lot of marketplace founders, they think that if I just launch another Airbnb or another TopTal or another kind of this marketplace, then I'm gonna earn a lot of money and people are gonna use it. But that's not how it works. Why would those buyers and sellers on that existing marketplace switch? That's the thing. So if you don't offer anything new or anything unique, then you will struggle with growth and retention. The best way to solve this is to find a unique angle to whatever you want to build. So let's take TopTal. TopTal is only focusing on the 3% top talents in the world. So they're unique compared to Upwork. And then there's StockX. They are different from any other e-commerce platform out there because they have this verification process. So that made them unique in the beginning. So you really have to focus on a niche. You have to niche down in the beginning at least as much as possible to find a unique angle. So instead of just an Airbnb for a country, so let's say an Airbnb for Germany, focus on something way more unique. So an Airbnb for dog owners or something like that. I don't know if that exists, but that could be an idea maybe. Because it's super important that your marketplace has a unique answer to why would X use this instead of the existing marketplace out there. So whatever you're making has to be able to answer that question. So my marketplace, you should use my marketplace instead of the existing one that is out there because of this unique angle. Okay, so let's say you solved the supply and demand issue and you also are offering something unique to what was already out there. Now comes the next problem. How are you going to make money on your marketplace? Because there are actually quite some pitfalls here that you have to be aware of as a marketplace founder. Some marketplace founders, they choose to charge too early on their marketplace, and that can scare users away. Others pick the wrong revenue model, especially using commissions when users can easily bypass them. For example, if a marketplace for home renovation charges 15% per booking, what's stopping the customers from booking outside the marketplace once they connected to the other side? So you have to choose the right model based on user behavior. Commissions, for instance, they work really well if the marketplace adds trust and convenience, like Airbnb, for instance. Membership models, for instance, they work really well if there's a high value in staying on board, like LinkedIn Premium, for instance. And listing fees, they work well if the sellers are looking for exposure, so that could be Zillow, for instance. So as an example, Upwork, they started with a pure commission model, but then some users, they started connecting outside the platform. That's basically why they introduced these kind of memberships for their top tier freelancers, so that these freelancers had a more predictable revenue stream and they could at the same time keep their commissions. And as you can see here on my marketplace, nordicmugs.com, which is the marketplace I built for buying and selling Moomin mugs, which are really popular in the Nordic region, I still haven't earned much on that marketplace, even though I've been going now for almost a year. But what I'm thinking of trying in the very near future is to try and introduce these kind of featured listings where you would have to pay as a user to be featured somewhere on the marketplace. And then I'll see if that works. But my idea is to slowly try and introduce these kind of features so that I'm not scaring any of the users on both sides away, because that would be the worst, of course. Because Both sides at the moment are working, it is working, and they are transacting with each other. So at some point, I'm sure I will figure out a way to earn money on this marketplace. And now, even though you have all of this right, then a bad user experience can still kill your marketplace. For instance, if your marketplace is very slow, that can kill conversions. Usually you say that if pages take more than 3 seconds to load, people will just leave. Or if your marketplace is missing some core features, like a messaging system, for instance, then people will also leave. If it's too difficult to message each other, they will just leave. And then, of course, there's the onboarding. If it's difficult to onboard or maybe connect your account to Stripe Connect, then people will probably also just find it confusing and not use your marketplace. So a couple of ways that are relatively easy on how to fix all these problems. So first of all tech has to be modern, right? So it has to be looking good also on mobile phones. Of course, that's a 100% must right now, right, in the world we are living in, right? So everything has to look good both on tablet, desktop, mobile. All the listings have to be relatively nice looking, and the images has to be looking good, and also you should be able to zoom in on the images so that people can see what they are looking for in a more detailed view. You need to have a search mechanism and also a filtering mechanism so that people can easily and quickly find what they're looking for. Messaging, as I said before, that's a must. That needs to work in order to create this kind of trust in between each other. Payments and reviews, that's also a must, I would say. So for payments, if you're relatively small, you should probably go for Stripe Connect. If you are bigger, there are some other options out there. I actually have a video on this that I'll add in the description. Reviews, that also just creates a lot of trust, so you should have a review system in place. And in order to have all of this in place, why reinvent the wheel when you can just go for my boilerplate actually? So check that out if you're considering building a new marketplace. And then there's actually also a last silent killer for marketplace founders. Some marketplace founders, they actually choose to launch too late. They might get stuck in the feature creep, right? So like, I'm just gonna add one more feature and then it's ready, or I just need to fix this thing on the front end so that it looks really nice before I launch. So these kind of founders that are too focused on tech actually, in the way that everything has to be 100% perfect, and they keep on finding something new to build before they launch. And that usually results in them spending many months on building everything so that it's perfect, instead of just launching relatively quickly, maybe after a couple of weeks, to find out if they can actually solve the chicken and the egg issue. Because if you don't launch, you're not gonna learn if you can actually solve all the other issues. So here's how to fix this. Launch fast so that you can validate your idea. Airbnb, for instance, they started with just a simple landing page. Try and focus on if you can get the first transactions going, even though you have a little bit of a rough version to begin with of your marketplace MVP. Because if you can actually get a transaction or two flowing through your marketplace on that version, that's a really good sign. And if you can't, that's actually a really bad sign. Because even though you then later build a more polished version of your marketplace, you might still not be able to get any transactions. And always remember the MVP rule. So if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your marketplace, then you launched too late, basically. So that is it for this one, guys. I hope that you found it somewhat useful. Remember that if you're considering building your own marketplace, then you should check out my boilerplate called Speed Build Marketplace. And until next time, see you. Bye bye.